It's a question many Democrats are trying to answer right now. Where does the party go from here? Senator Chris Murphy laid out some ideas in a memo. Quote, Democrats have the opportunity to call Republicans on their bluff and prove to the American people that we are the ones on the side of the workers. But that's only possible if we have the courage to pick fights with powerful corporations and billionaires and fight against the status quo. And Senator Murphy says he has internal polling to back that up. Back with me, Michael Steele, joining in on the conversation, MSNBC host and Washington Post associate editor Jonathan Capehart. Okay, Michael, Senator Murphy's message is that Democrats need to take on corporate power, billionaire class. That's what's popular across the board for voters. What do you think?
Yeah, I get that. And you know, it's always good to have a target, but you have to understand fundamentally where your party is. In order to move it where you hope it needs to go. And so you have to fundamentally set back and really assess what the message from the voters was in this election. This was not let's run into Donald Trump's arm and authoritarianism and I want to be a dictator for a day. That wasn't what this was about. It really, at the end of the day, was not just about gas prices. It was this combination of culture and economics coming together in a way in which the voters felt in both cases, culturally put upon by Democrats with, as they would describe it, wokeism and, trying to groom my kids and all the ugly narratives that emerged there without an appropriate response from the party. Economically, people do feel that pinch and still do. So you can't just talk about we're building bridges and fixing the potholes on your way to the grocery store that's going to cost you a lot of money. So understanding that. Yep. Exactly. Understanding both of those are very, very fundamental. And before you start, let's just go after and attack billionaires and corporations, because at the core of it, that's not what this was really about.
And they were happy to elect a billionaire a second time. They want to be like him in that regard.
Exactly.
Right? But you spoke with Bill Clinton, Jonathan. It's good to have you here, by the way.
Yes, on set.
Yeah, getting out of D.C. You had an exclusive interview. He seems to be kind of on the same page as Chris Murphy, and I want to play the chunk that reminded me of what Chris Murphy wrote. Take a listen.
Where is the Democratic Party going from here? Because Senator Bernie Sanders, who doesn't even belong to the Democratic Party, says that the party wasn't progressive enough. Do you see it that way?
No. I mean, look at not progressive enough. The infrastructure bill. There's 60,000, I think, projects underway. They'll soon be up to 100. And the CHIPS bill, they're all over America. And interestingly enough, both those bills, a majority of the investments have been in rural red areas. So no, I don't think, I think he means by that we should have been more against big corporations. And if you take a poll, you find people in both parties really do favor that. That's why we can always pass a vote on raising the minimum wage in a red state. Because blue-collar workers who distrust the government feel like those votes are something they can control. And they are skeptical of big corporations. On the other hand, the richest guy in America, maybe the world, Elon Musk, is up there listening on foreign phone calls with the president-elect, and they're not too concerned about it.
Look, Bill Clinton obviously knows a little bit about connecting with the American people. Got elected twice, right? He was very popular. But I think it also, for me, raises the question of message versus messenger, right? So there's a little bit of that in there. Are both of those things in there? Anyway, how did you read what he had to say as part of this larger conversation about where does the Democratic Party go, which is exactly what you asked him?
Well, it sounds like he and Senator Murphy and apparently Senator Sanders to a certain extent are on the same page, that you need to go after big corporations and remind people that, part of what's happening is because big corporations and millionaires and billionaires, doing my Senator Sanders impression, are gaming the system in their favor. But in the interview, which we're going to show in two big chunks, Saturday and also on Sunday, the number one thing President Clinton kept coming back to was that Democrats need to communicate. They need to go and talk to people, even when they know those folks don't want to talk to them. You need to go and tell people what you have done. So when the president mentions the Infrastructure Act, the CHIPS Act, those are things that are helping red areas. Democrats need to go into red areas, which Vice President Harris and Governor Tim Walz and lots of people on the campaign did, but it's kind of hard to do that in 107 days. You need to have more time to do that. And so the number one issue from the president, in addition to, we should have gone after big corporations, it's looking ahead. We, meaning Democrats, need to go into these places and talk to people and listen. That Democrats need to sit and listen to people, where they're coming from, what their concerns are. Otherwise, Democrats will be, my assessment, Democrats will be in the wilderness for a while.
Well, Pete Buttigieg, who knows a little something about communication, the guy can do an interview just about any time, any place, anywhere, right? He went and talked to a bunch of young Democratic electeds, and he was talking about taking online conversations offline at scale. It's interesting because Clinton said he deliberately didn't want to do big events, right? He wanted to talk to people, as you say, one-on-one. And he added to that, you don't get anywhere but, talking about the shocking things that are going on. Buttigieg doesn't say it that way, that's me. But all the shocking things that are going on, he says you need to move past that. You just need to talk to people at scale. That's kind of what I think made Bill Clinton one of the great politicians of a generation. Well,
yes, that is that. But what makes President Clinton one of the greatest politicians in modern presidential history is that it's something that he writes in his book, and he said later in the interview, actually in the book talk that we did after that interview, where he says, if you scratch someone long enough, a real person will emerge. And by that, he means you got to keep talking. Talk past your differences, talk about what you have in common, ask questions, listen, and eventually you will get to a point where you will find the real person, and the person will find you. And that's how you make those connections. He tells a story about how, during the campaign, I love jumping over the barbed wire fence and going out and talking to people. He was at some fair, I think in Georgia, where there were guys in MAGA hats. And he talked to them, and they loved it, and they asked for pictures with him. He says, you would not expect those guys in the MAGA hats wanting to talk to me and take pictures with me, and yet they did. And in that is where he sees hope for the future, that it is possible for all of us to talk, no matter where we are in the political spectrum.
Michael, billions of dollars were spent on this campaign, and I don't know how many hours on television, on radio, on podcasts, in newspapers have been spent trying to deconstruct what happened. And it seems like we're getting back to a pretty simple place. Number one, it's the economy, stupid. And number two, the best politicians listen to people. Am I oversimplifying?
No, you're not. You're not. And I'm really looking forward to Jonathan's interview, because I think there's some interesting nuggets in there, as exposed in the clips that you played. But it also raises, I think, the fundamental theme line to the point to your question, is how that communication occurs. And that communication occurs on a two-way lane, where you're asking questions and listening at the same time. Politicians are not very good at listening. Voters are very good at telling you what they want. That has been the disconnect that has led to the rise of Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party, MAGA. And now you're at a point where the extremes of both the Democratic and Republican parties have met. There is such a creature as the Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump voter. They were real in 2016. 2020 and again in 2024. Their numbers are not shrinking, they're increasing. So understanding that piece between each parties is important. I understand where Bill Clinton's coming from, talking about going after corporations and all of that. But you also have to understand that it's the DL Democrats that gave the workers NAFTA, which shifted the jobs offline. Out of the country. So that reconnection with that working class voter has got to be established cleanly with an understanding of why that voter is ticked off at you in the first place, and 10 million of them stayed home in this election.
Yep.